going to switch things up a bit here. I think that we can talk about crypto till we're blue in the face, and there's no shortage of content that you can read. But actually seeing the stuff that's out there in the wild, there's really no substitute for it. And so we've touched on prediction markets a lot this morning throughout the day. So let's jump in and actually see one in the wild, specifically Augur. So Augur is a prediction market platform that is built on top of Ethereum. It's permissionless, and it allows anyone to create a prediction market for any future event. The events themselves can range from sports to politics to weather, but even that is really thinking too small. I mean, bigger use cases involve financial derivatives on just about any asset, insurance products, synthetic assets. Balaji mentioned great use cases before about internet trends. We're talking about really big markets here and really disruptive tech. And so Augur enables this in a peer-to-peer way. And the blockchain and the smart contracts act as a natural clearinghouse. So they remove counterparty risk and really minimize the need for trust. So Augur launched in the summer of last year. It's by far one of the most sophisticated sets of smart contracts that's been deployed on Ethereum. And it works. It has shown to be robust and resolve markets with truthful outcomes. Augur can be thought of as two components. One is the smart contract layer, which is the protocol itself, and the second is the user-facing application. And so many of you have probably read about or heard about Augur, but let's actually see what it looks like. So this is the core user interface for Augur. So as you can see, it lists a ton of different markets that you can wager on. These are some of the most liquid ones that are available today. We see markets that touch on derivatives and crypto. What will the price of a specific asset be at a point in time? Politics and Donald Trump, whether he's going to be nominated again or impeached. That's quite the extreme, but we live in some crazy times. Even at the bottom, you have English Premier League soccer. So on the left-hand side here, you see some basic functional navigation. So you have the ability to create a market. You could just fill in some basic details, list some categories, designate a reporter, deposit some rep tokens, and then you can create that market. The next icon over here gives you the ability to track your portfolio. So you may have made a bunch of wagers before. You want to track them in real time and see what's going on. This allows you to do that. The next icon below that is reporting. And this lets you backstop the truth. And it allows you to dispute any market that you believe has resolved incorrectly. But let's go back to markets. Augur itself is a protocol. And it's great because it works. But its core competency is not user experience. It's not designed by itself to bring prediction markets to the mainstream. And when it comes to product, all of the little things matter. So for instance, on the left here, we see a column of tags, a gray column that marks each market based on category. But these tags are inputted manually by whoever the market creator is when they set up the market. And sometimes people misspell things. Sometimes someone is more accurate or more specific about something than someone else. As a result, look how long this list of tags are. It's frankly unmanageable. There's a category for sports. There's a category for sport. There's a category for sports basketball. There's a category for NBA, NFL, sports football. It's just not exactly user-friendly. There's also markets here that are fundamentally questionable because they're set to report before the end date. So this one near the top about Ethereum at the price at the end of April, the time listed to report the outcome is 9 a.m. in the morning and not midnight. And so that's an ambiguously vague market that could potentially be problematic. Let's try to make a wager on a market on Augur. There's an interesting one I found about Coinbase, possibly delisting Ethereum Classic. That's a pretty interesting market, so let's look at that. Let's say I want to wager yes. I think this is going to happen. I want to monetize my knowledge. Let's see how do we do that, right? I see this order book over here on the right. I'm not exactly sure what that is or why it's there, but I'm basically just looking for the yes button at this point in time. I don't see it. I see on the bottom I can buy and sell shares, but I'm not exactly sure what I'm buying or why I'm buying it. So this right here is the exact moment where you lose the user. It's just not intuitive to most people. And so what we found is that one of the best leading indicators for a platform is actually third parties and developers building applications on top. And there are lots of people in the community that recognize the promise of Augur, and they want to help enable it. And there have been countless data explorers that are tracking activity on the Augur protocol. And at this point, it's really interesting that there are at least 4 venture-backed companies that are building a user interface on top of Augur. And those companies, frankly, are much better positioned to acquire customers and streamline this entire process. So let's take a look at some. Here we have a company called Veil. Veil is live today on mainnet. When we get into Veil, we see a very similar screen to what the Augur interface had, but this one is much more intuitive. That long list of tags that we had on the left, that's now replaced with a very simple color-coded list of items to help sort markets at the top here. Let's click on user-nominated markets. That'll tell us what people are really interested in. And we seem to have the same market from before on the Augur interface, will Coinbase delist Ethereum Classic? But look how much easier it is to actually make a wager and engage with this platform. I want to buy yes, so I click yes. It's that simple. And now I can type how much I want to wager on this particular market. So right now, let's say I want to wager 0.05 ETH. Here, it conveniently tells me the payout. Well, if I'm wrong on my bet, naturally I'm going to lose my 0.05 ETH. But if I'm right, it tells me that I can win 0.13 ETH. If you want more details, you can even click up above, and if you're more of a power user, you can look at liquidity on the order book and look at it in a very easy way. So I want to wager yes. Let's actually wager yes and see what happens. So this takes us to our MetaMask wallet. We sign our message that we want to make this, and success. It's gone through, and we've officially made this wager. That's how easy it is. But Veil doesn't just provide a user interface. That's helpful, obviously, but they actually enhance the overall usability of Augur by providing real value-added services. So remember before when I mentioned that there are some markets that are ambiguous or vague? Well, here at the top of the markets page, you see that they have the word audited. And so what Veil is doing is they're filtering out potentially problematic markets so that its user base has access to only the highest quality ones. And because Veil itself can be confident that these markets will resolve in the correct way, they can offer their users what's called instant settlement. And so Augur naturally has a waiting period at the end of every market to allow someone to dispute the outcome. Now that's great because it protects the overall security of Augur, but it's also, the downfall is that it actually holds up payouts. And so Veil offers its users the ability to cash out 99% of their proceeds immediately. And that's a huge advantage, especially today when all the wagers are denominated in ETH, which is a volatile asset. And so even taking pricing risk for a couple days for this to settle can really impact your overall ROI on any given wager that you make. This is also going to be tremendously helpful when Augur supports stablecoins later this year, because this instant settlement will be able to increase the overall velocity of the capital within the system. Let's look at how easy it is to create a market on Veil. Let's do, will ETH's price be higher than a certain dollar amount at the end of May? And just prior to coming on stage, we created this market. So this is out there right now. As you can see, it's actually a draft market, which is a pretty cool feature. So this is at no cost to us. We don't pay any gas fees. We're not paying anything. And this allows market creators to actually gauge potential demand for a market before they actually go ahead and make it. To create any market on Augur, you need to actually submit a deposit in rep tokens, which you get back when you report on the outcome of the market. But not everyone has rep tokens in their wallet. And frankly, it's sort of a pain to get this far only to be told you need to go find rep tokens. And you have to go to Binance, and then you have to buy it, and you have to transfer it in your wallet. So what Veil does is actually allows you to buy rep natively within the app. So it plugs directly into a decentralized exchange called Uniswap. And so right from here, you could actually acquire the exact amount of rep that you need without ever having to leave the app. It all happens natively. All of the complexity gets abstracted away from the user. And this is really just a great example of the modularity that we've been talking about that Kyle mentioned in his talk earlier this morning. So clearly, Veil is much easier to use. It has a lot of great features, but it's still clearly designed for the power user. And the power user is not the only target market out there. So let's look at another company that's building on top of Augur. This company is called Guesser. They actually announced their seed round of $1.1 million yesterday. Guesser is approaching customer acquisition in just a much different way. So rather than power users, Guesser is just trying to make it as easy as possible to wager on an event. That's it. So they just source right here the 4 most liquid, highest quality markets that are listed on Augur. and they allow you to easily wager on them. And so this is very, very simple to use. Like, let's wager on the price of Pinterest being $25 or higher by the end of the month. This tells me very clearly when I click on it that if I want to wager, let's say no, I could win 3.1 times my money, basically. So let's say I type in $5 and I click buy no. I get a very intuitive prompt, exactly what you'd expect to see in any Web 2.0 app, right? I'm going to wager $5. If I'm right, I win 15.5. So I go ahead, I click confirm this purchase. And this again takes me back to my MetaMask wallet. I sign the transaction, it brings me back, great, I'm done. It's gone through, and I can look at this in my predictions at the top here, and I can see what's in my wallet of all the different wagers that I've used. And so this approach allows Guesser to easily onboard a non-technical user and just get them into the ecosystem in a very quick, easy, and friendly way. But go-to-market strategies here are actually pretty boundless. In both of these examples with Guesser and Veil, you've got a ton of different types of markets all under one roof. But practically, maybe there's very little overlap between the guy that wants to wager on crypto prices versus the guy that wants to wager on politics versus sports versus weather, right? And so maybe the right go-to-market strategy is just to focus on a specific vertical and be the best at that one vertical. So here's another company that's building on Augur today called BlitzPredict. BlitzPredict is currently in testnet. But it's taking that exact approach, and it's just customizing their entire platform to attract sports bettors. That's it. And so right here on the front, it's not about where you can wager. The first thing that you actually see is the content. And so they want to inform their bettors and give people the perspectives, the content for the perspectives that they need to engage with the platform. And by enabling peer-to-peer betting, they could actually cut out the egregious fees that centralized sportsbooks usually charge. So if you bet on sports, I do. I love it. It's fantastic. I live in New Jersey. It's legal and it's great. But if you bet on sports, you're very accustomed to seeing pricing listed at minus 110. So minus 110 means that I have to put up $110 in order to win 100. Well, where do you think that 10 goes? It goes to the sports book. So the sports book can be completely hedged on both sides in a peer-to-peer way, but they'll always win because they're the house and they're taking this fee. And so a platform like this has the ability to undercut that. And so here you can see there's a bunch of different markets you can bet on. If you're a soccer fan, you could click here and bet on Tottenham Spurs versus Ajax in the UEFA Champions League. So that's one example, but there's even another company building on Augur called Flux. Now Flux takes a very similar approach, but is hyper-focused on prediction markets around startups. So they allow users to wager on things like valuations, round sizes, and other big milestones for early-stage companies. For example, you have SpaceX here, will they launch a rocket by a certain date, or will a company successfully raise their seed or Series A round? The point of all of this is that Augur is meant fundamentally to be a back-end developer tool. We now have demonstrable evidence that it works, and it's robust. But only now are we starting to see the potential come to fruition as all of these different companies build on top of it. And it's somewhat ironic, but centralized companies are going to be absolutely critical to the success of decentralized protocols because they could just be much more flexible when it comes to customer acquisition and product market fit. They can be much more nimble. They can focus on specific geographies. They can focus on specific market verticals. They could pivot their strategy as they see fit. They could roll out features, and they could just iterate much more quickly. To put all of this in perspective, none of this existed a year ago. Absolutely none of it. Not even Augur. It was just research and development. It was testing. And only in the last 2 months did Veil and Guesser even launch. Flux, BlitzPredict, they're not even live yet. That's how fast all of this is moving. And so just imagine what we're going to be talking about a year from now. We are really excited for these companies to enhance the usability and visibility of Augur, and we expect them to be key catalysts for the growth and promise of prediction markets on a go-forward basis. Thank you.